Well, good evening, listeners. Always a gift. I can't believe I get to do this, and I started this almost 3 years ago now. I didn't think it would last even a month, and here we are. And so it's been amazing to see all the people I've gotten to talk to. And for those of you who followed the podcast, you know I actually just spoke with a single mom not too long ago to get her perspective on single motherhood. And at the same time, I really wanted to get to talk to a single dad. And I came across Damon's Instagram because I was looking up influencers or just anybody who was very open about their journey who would want to talk about it. And he came up, and I saw his pictures and his time with his daughter, and he just seemed like a very kind, personable person, which I mean he could not have been, but he ended up being, so that's amazing. And Damon wanted to come on the show and talk with me about being a single dad and just his journey. I know he wants to encourage people. I know he wants to share his story and try to get it out there more so that people know about it, single parenting. So, Damon, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Damon, I want to ask you, because I will put your Instagram on below the podcast when I publish it. And for those listening, it'll be called Damon D is how he goes by on Instagram. But it'll be linked below. What made you want to share your story about being a single dad? Because, and this is just my perspective, I know that women may seem a lot more open to sharing about personal journeys like that, but I never thought that men would be. And I'll even tell you, as I was looking for single dads, it was not as prevalent as single moms, just looking on the Instagram influencer thing. So what made you decide that you wanted to talk about that?
Well, I mean, you kind of hit on it, the fact that no, no, there wasn't really a lot of talk about it, discussion about it. There weren't, this started from a place where I was looking to others at the beginning of my journey for guidance. For support, for community, and it wasn't there, or I didn't find it. And uh, I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to talk about the challenges and the benefits of being a single parent. But really, it was a lack of kind of resources or community out there that really kind of got me into this. I had considered joining, some advocacy organizations, those that were into fathers' rights, but I didn't really like the tone of their messaging, and so one day I just said,
Hmm.
you know what, I'm just gonna tell it from my viewpoint, my perspective, and maybe that's worth something to others, and that's kind of how I got on my way.
Do you, when you're talking about messaging, because I mean, I really don't know much about single parenting from the male perspective. Um, what was the messaging? Was it kind of like more of a bitter tone or more of a victimization tone? How would
Yeah.
you put it?
Yep, that's exactly it. It was, we're upset as fathers, right? The system is rigged against us. We're going to put all
Okay.
our energy into changing laws, modifying the narrative, lobbying legislators, and to me it was kind of like, well, we need some success stories, we need some positivity out there, that's going to,
Hmm.
hopefully influence others perception. And yeah, that was really it. It was just too negative. And the majority of what I had to say was, speaking to the relationship with my daughter, and my difficult but rewarding experiences raising her.
Yeah. And I would think too, I mean, and I'll ask you, like, when you meet other single dads, is it more of dads are looking for more of that um, politicalization or like wanting to do more in the political sphere, or do you find that a lot of single dads that you meet want more emotional support?
So, first of all, I would say I don't necessarily meet a lot of dads. I think that's one of the
Hmm.
learnings
Okay.
from doing this is, men, fathers are, inherently proud. They're not looking to others for guidance or advice or inspiration. I don't know exactly why that is. They're busy. They might think it wouldn't be helpful. I'm not exactly sure, but the fathers that I have connected with through my work are those who are wanting to make a difference in their child's life, who want to be engaged,
Hmm.
who are
Yeah.
having difficulty with balance, and so while I kind of set out for this to be a way to connect with fathers, it's turned more into providing a perspective from a father to mothers, especially single mothers who are going through, challenges and conflict with their, their co-parent, and in some ways, I think letting them know there are good fathers, out there. I mean, some,
Hmm.
struggle with the dad not being involved. What do I do? How do I get him more engaged? And, at the end of the day, I don't have, all the answers for that. My kind of purpose has been to just talk about what I do, for what that's worth to different people. And, some see it as, okay, I want to, model that behavior, and others just find hope in that there's our men fathers out there who want to be successful as parents, and so yeah, that was all kind of shocking. I've tried to reach more fathers, through doing things like this, or different collaborations with dad bloggers and such, but it's not really materialized, and so I'm still kind of trying to figure out how I establish more of a connection with dads.
Yeah. Well, um, I wanted to ask too, like, what is an assumption that people just make a lot? Or like that, I would make, not knowing about single fatherhood and what's that like? Is there a question you get a lot, or is there something that people naturally assume when you mention that you're a single dad or when that comes up in conversation?
Um, I think there is a negative stereotype that exists that you don't do much as the father. I think that's commonly what I get the most, I show it in a way, and I talk about it, on my Instagram, and, I used to have a blog, but I don't have that any longer, but I used to tell those stories, and, again, social media, is one of those places where is this real? Is this authentic? Is this genuine? And I tried to be
Sure.
very open and transparent so that authenticity would come across. But, I'm sure there was some doubt there, in the audience's mind. But everyone that knows me, personally, can see how, I'm very engaged. I'm very involved, and but what I get from a lot is they don't, especially women and mothers, just don't expect that from a dad. And I understand there are many fathers who
Hmm.
are not involved or have made choices to limit
Yeah.
their involvement, and so I get where that comes from. And I don't get wrapped up in it. All I can do is, at the end of the day, what matters most to me is being a parent for my daughter, you know, and sure I talk about my
Yeah.
experiences, but that's what I do, and that's what's most important to me. And, you know, I hope, you know, those who can see it or, you know, who follow me and read what I have to say, you know, can accept that there are, again, good men, good fathers out there, because I think, you know, this is about changing people's perception, and, you know, changing that stereotype. You know, there's a long way to go because some fathers and mothers are making, you know, suboptimal decisions to not be involved as much as they should be. But, you know, we'll hopefully slowly, you know, change that over time. I think a big part of it is, you know, parents, you know, men and women, mothers and fathers getting used to, or learning single parenthood and how they're to
Yeah.
be successful with it. And that's, you know, that's a new thing and no one's really talking about it, right? So, you know, we're gonna kind of see where that goes.
Well, I know that for most of the people that I've talked with or seen write about this, and even when I was talking with the single mom before, she walked away from a domestic violence situation that was not good for her. And so she had to leave to protect her child and herself. Um, but it was interesting because she was telling me that, like, at the end of the day, her daughter's still really little, and she'll pray at the end of the day that, like, God brings a daddy to them because she misses that, wanting that support. And the mom was mentioning that it's hard to have no one to rely on but yourself when it comes to income and jobs and all of this. And I wanted to ask you, like, as a single dad, are you content and um like, do you want to enter another relationship at some point in your life, or do you really like and have come to embrace being a single dad? So for you, whether you get into a relationship or not, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that I'm going to embrace whatever I have in the present, right? And that's kind of my, you know, my mantra. That's my MO. That's, you know, how I go day to day. I live in the moments I'm in. And you know, that's it's a big question. You know, you know, easily can say that I want a relationship. You know, I think, you know, I've, you know, had relationships in the past, and there were a lot of, you know, very enjoyable, rewarding things about those relationships.
Yeah,
And you know, single parents, you know, we struggle. It's not even just being a single parent, it's being single, you know. We just have the additional responsibility of raising a child, you know. But
yeah,
it's hard to do everything alone, you know. It's difficult to feel alone. It's you know, can be hard for some people to be absent of that, you know, companionship and that's the support, you know. And so while I, you know, one day want a relationship, I think about it in terms of, you know, what's important to me, you know, focusing on myself, making sure I'm, you know, meeting my obligations or exceeding my obligations as a parent, and, you know, creating um, that happiness for, you know, myself and my daughter. And you know, through that, you know, and the love we have as part of our little family, I've always believed that that's when the other things fall into place, right? You know,
yeah,
you need to get good with yourself, you know, and that's, you know, finding a job you like, you know, making money, supporting yourself, you know, all those kinds of things. um and then the rest would follow. But I also understand that's not always you know, doable for people. You know, some, you know, prioritize differently a romantic relationship, you know, and that's more meaningful. And I get that. And I would never tell someone, no, you shouldn't do it that way. You know, what I can
yeah,
or would say is, find your peace, find your happiness, find your groove as a parent, right? As a single parent, right? And then maybe it's time to, consider the, other relationships, from there. That's kind of how I see it.
Well, I was going to ask because and this isn't even families that, are with a single parent. I mean, it's really easy, I think, for parents who are in a relationship that is unfulfilling, whether they're single or not, to view their children as like a means of, and this isn't always conscious. In fact, I think it's a very subconscious thing, a means of kind of filling a lot of voids that a person in a like another companion would fill or your
Yeah.
partner would fill. And I don't mean in a physical sense, but I mean in an emotional sense. Really lots of emotional energy, like you're my daughter, you're my son, and
Yeah.
I'm pouring so much into you, so you pour a lot back into me. And I can see how tempting that would be too. And I've experienced it on the other end of it, and it's really hard when you see a parent suffering or a parent having, you know, like you said, experiencing that loneliness. And like as a kid, you're like, how can I help my parent out? How can I make them feel more loved or accepted? Did you, when you started out doing the single parenting, was that hard? Like how have you, like when do you know in your mind, okay, I need certain boundaries, I need certain outlets so that I can get filled up, so that when I'm talking with my child, when I'm giving them the
Yeah.
attention they need, they're getting all of that, and I don't need any. I'm not trying to suck something from them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I think you have some really good insights, and you're asking some great questions. So, trying to think of the best way to start with this one. There you touched upon, a child satisfying some of that emotional, you know, give and take, right? I have
Yeah,
a child who I can express my feelings to, my love for, and vice versa. That makes me feel good. And I think for me, for a long time, that was sufficient, right? Like I didn't, it counteracted the loneliness or the lack of companionship. It was just kind of like the way I approached it from early on when I became a single parent was, you know, whatever the average lifespan is, 80 something years, a kid is only a
yeah,
kid for, 10% of that. And, these are the best years as a parent, right? And so that became a priority. I'm like, this is what I want to enjoy. So, everything else can kind of move down that list while I elevate as a priority, me being a parent. And so
yeah,
there's some distinctions. I can see why maybe some single parents like myself feel less lonely because we're involved, we're engaged, we look forward to seeing and our children and parenting, and that makes us feel good. And then all the other time, if you're in a co-parenting situation, you're doing your other stuff. You're working, you're catching up on
yeah,
rest, you're doing household chores. But there are, obviously, there's a lot of, especially, single parents on their own, right? So solo parents, whatever you're going to call them, that have it a lot harder than I do. And I can't even imagine what it's like to, be confronted with that, with those kind of, barriers in a sense to having a, more comprehensive life where you can have,
sure,
be able to advance in your career and make new friends and have a romantic relationship and still be a good parent. Since, when I became a single parent, I kind of embraced it. I kind of looked at it as if, hey, not by choice. I always tell everyone I would do anything to be able to see my daughter every day, but that's not the situation I'm in. And so I'm going to make the most of my situation, right? So, if it's a halftime thing, I'm all in on my 50% of the parenting time, and the other time I'm traveling or you know um doing work, right, or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
and so I've really come to just make the most of the time I have. And when you're a parent, it doesn't leave a lot. Especially if you prioritize being a parent, it doesn't leave a lot. So I guess to kind of wrap that up, it's it's always, I think, going to be scary at first. You're confronted with a lot of unknown. You're confronted with a lot of doubt. And how am I going to do this? How can I possibly, be happy and make everyone happy around? Sometimes you have a difficult co-parent. Sometimes you have no co-parent, right? And I would just tell other single parents to just do what you can with your time, right? Do the best you can, right? Make decisions that are rooted in the best interests of your children. um and that's the best you can do. And I'm hopeful that things work out well from there. And I've talked to friends and loved ones who were raised by single parents, and they validated the things I'm doing. Right, Damon? I know it's hard, and but just I know you're frustrated, but you can't see her every day, and you have some issues with your co-parent. But just do what you're doing, love your child, show them love, and they
Yeah.
will understand it someday.
Well, I think one thing that really struck me when I was, looking at your Instagram and seeing the different things you talked about is you don't you're honest, but it's not like a negative feed that's just constantly happening over and over. And I know that in co-parenting situations where the parents aren't together or whatever the case may be, it's really easy to think of, like you said earlier before we started this interview, all the negative things and the things that are wrong with the other person or whatever it is. And, growing up, my household, it wasn't a co parenting situation until I was 18. So I was about to leave the house. So I didn't really, parenting wasn't really the big deal anymore. But, um, I remember just from my mom or my dad, it was very much like if we were alone with them, they would love to talk about how bad the other person was. And I'm not sure they meant to do it intentionally, but that's just what happened. And so naturally, I felt kind of like, okay, whose side do I take on this issue? Who's the victim in this situation? Do you, when you started single parenting, was that hard to not say something negative to your child about the other person? Or how do you navigate, like, even if the other person does do something that's hurtful, maybe even to the child, and the child comes to you and is like, how could this person do this? How do you navigate, like, I want to be honest, but I also do not want you to see this person as your enemy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said previously about having this kind of guidepost in your mind and your heart about always acting in the best interests of the child, right? If you can
Yeah.
capture the essence of that, you should make the right decisions, and sure, there were, hundreds of times, if not more, where, my co-parent frustrated me, especially early on, right? It was, there was resentment about the relationship ending, it was contentious, the kid can get wrapped up in that, you I didn't, I've never acted on like those impulses, but you would hear they said something, so you would want to say something back. But I made the choice early on to never say anything negative, about her mother. And I hope others. It's not easy, but it's the only way, to do this, to where you're not going to, damage, the future relationship with your co-parent, with your child, their relationship with the other parent. Um,
Yeah.
and the reality is, um, you have to learn how to parent together. And whether you're single parents that are co-parenting or you're married raising children, right? everyone has a different parenting style. Everyone has different expectations. Everyone has a different skill set, right, for parenting. And there's never going to be, 100% alignment agreement, right, to how we do this, right?
Yeah,
And I
sure.
think, if I said anything, yeah, I mean, a couple things. One, it's never talk negative about the other parent, right? It doesn't do good for your child. It actually can hurt them pretty significantly over time. Um, and then, the second thing, would be to understand that, not everything is in your control. You have
Hmm.
to, at first, and I see this with, friends and, people I've met through my Instagram and my blogging is, they get very upset, oh, the other parent did this and I don't agree. And, this violates the agreement and they're going to have to go to court and, all these kinds of things. And if you're going to drive yourself crazy if can't accept that there are some things that are going to be done differently in the other household, um, and you don't have, control over some of that stuff, and so you have to be able to let that go and understand that, this is nothing necessarily to do with my relationship with the co-parent in terms of how we ended up no longer being together. It's
Yeah.
understanding that they're going to make different decisions for how they raise their child, and hopefully one day the people can figure it out and come together and learn how to do it, safely and happily. And some people would say solo parenting is easier in that sense, right? But if you're on your own, you make your own choices, and so I've heard that as well. But it's really just kind of accepting that you can't control everything. It's going to make a big difference.
No, yeah, that's huge. I mean, that's huge for anything, not even just parenting. I mean, that's just to live
Yeah.
life with a content heart is to realize that control is obviously there's some things you can control, but the reality of it is so much is not. And so that's true, yeah. Um, I was going to ask too, just for the audience, because you mentioned that your relationship ended with your co parent, and you were speaking now and saying that, you guys are actually on pretty good terms,
Hmm.
decent terms.
Yep.
Can you share just briefly for the audience, that's listening, how did you become a single parent? And when that choice happened, were you tempted to not be part of the situation? Because I know for a lot of relationships that do break up, sometimes the dad is the one, like you said at the beginning of this, the stereotype is like the dad's like, I'm done. I'm walking away. I'm going to start a new life. And then the mom is the one who's left behind, taking care of the kids and trying to fill that void the dad left. So, how did that happen for you? And why did you decide, no, I'm going to be really involved in this? Like, I'm not going to take that stereotypical route.
Yeah. Well, I would say, I think any parent I would hope would understand that, this is your obligation, like, this child didn't, ask to come into this world. And if you're part of bringing them here, you have a responsibility to take care of them. It was never, the pregnancy was unplanned, right? Ideally, the way this should go, in my opinion, is, you find love with someone, you establish a really strong, healthy foundation for your relationship, and you talk about having children and how that might enhance your lives together. that wasn't my situation. This was, unexpected. It's not that I never wanted to be a parent. One of six kids, and
Hmm.
I've always loved, my being with my siblings and my parents and cousins and good friends, and I always knew I wanted to be a dad, and I thought I could be a really good one. And so, while again, it wasn't the timing I expected, I was still excited for it. The challenge more for me was I wasn't so much nervous about being a dad. It was, what do I do about a relationship that wasn't, on stable ground, and how
Right.
does sorting that out and those feelings, where do we need to go with that in order to be in a position to be the best possible parent, right? And I'm sure you've heard before, as others, a lot of people, will the relationship's falling apart and they stay together for the kids. I don't know how I feel about that, right? I don't necessarily believe if people are unhappy in their marriage or the relationship or something else, that they can be the best possible parent they can be. And so,
And you were
it was,
married
yeah,
just
never married,
you were married just to never married. Okay.
never married, right? So, dating for about a year, then pregnant, then child. And um, I think
I
I
mean, I have
always
to
knew,
say before, well, just to
yeah.
pause for a second. I mean, that's so commendable of you. I just want to tell you I've never met the women in that I have interacted with who do not have a father, like the father staying in the sense of like wanting to be a part of the child, not even if they want to stay in the relationship, because I'm agreeing with you in that some relationships, especially if you're not married, aren't meant to keep going. It just would be really dumb to do that. But at the same time, like the fact that you wanted to take care of your daughter, like you should be so proud of that. That's amazing.
I appreciate those words, but I don't see it as pride. I don't want a pat on the back because I've made the choice to be a good father. I'm meeting my obligation. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I shouldn't be commended for that. But I understand there are a lot of mothers and fathers, but more fathers that aren't involved. And so when we see a good dad, it's like, wow, you're doing great. And then it's like, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do, right? And
Yeah.
it would be a lot different doing it alone, co-parenting. For my situation, it's taken years to figure out how we do that. And I tell everyone, you just keep working at it, and eventually you get there. It's hard. But yeah, I just it's I don't know how to explain it. It comes naturally to me because um, I just this is what I have to do. I don't understand, and it frustrates me when fathers choose not to be involved. Like I can't understand that, because it's been such a blessing for me, and such a huge part of how I've enjoyed life, the past, bunch of years. And
Yeah.
it boggles my mind that people, men and women, can walk away from that responsibility. I wish I had, an explanation or an answer. It's just it's tragic. It's so sad.
What is I was going to ask, what do you love about your daughter? Like when you interact with her, maybe it's changed over the years because I know she's older now. She's not like a baby or a kid. Um, what do you like? Cause what do you connect with her on? What do you guys love to do together? Like, what is it that you're like? This is my person as a kid.
Yeah. She's the best. I mean, when she was little, it was the curiosity, right? It was the cuteness, right? It was the hugs and the warmth and just little person you can, and
Yeah.
yeah, you just for me it was just like it was wondrous or wonderful. It was just like, wow, this person wanted to be with me and spend time with me and listen to music with me and play games with me. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I had my moments where I'm like, get away from me, I'm tired and I need a break.
Yeah.
But let's be real, that happens even if you're a super parent or whatever. But I just did it as, I am who I am. These are the things I liked. These are the things I want to do, and she's just going to do them with me. And um, I'm the type of person that I like to travel. I like to go to events, concerts and sporting events and things like that. And it's kind of like she's my plus one, right? She's my best friend right now. I don't there's nowhere else for her to go, and I still want to do those things, so she's going to do them with me.
Yeah.
And you can start to see it now as she's becoming more independent and wanting to do things with her friends. She enjoys she enjoys that. We've always been big into playing games and being competitive and going to things. And it's the simple things. I mean, today I told her, um she was working this summer at an ice cream stand, and I used to pick her up and we would get ice cream, and it's and I'll close for the season, and I'm like, I miss that. I miss
Hmm.
going to pick you up, seeing you walk out, having these feelings of, wow, like I can't believe she's this age and she's working, and she has a job and she makes money, and she just did that for 4 hours, and I'm so proud. And I love ice cream, and so does she. And so let's get two huge sundaes and just go at it, right? So just special moments like that, because as they get older, there's just less of that. So you learn to cherish the moments, when you can get them. And then little things like that of, it was 20 minutes of me picking her up, eating ice cream, going home, and then she's on to something else. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Is No, it does. And I love ice cream too. Ice cream,
Mhm.
food bonds people
Yeah,
together just automatically.
absolutely.
Um, do you, being a dad, but being male and her being female, was there something you particularly found hard? What was the hardest thing for you to connect with her on because you were a male and she was female? Was there anything that you were like, this is the hardest thing I've encountered to like talk about or work through? Because obviously there's a difference there.
Yeah, that's easy. It's hair and makeup. I I know nothing about that. And those things of being a female, being a woman. We're super close. So everything else, she can talk to me about everything. And so emotionally, I've always tried to build that type of relationship where we're honest with each other and we tell each other everything. And there's been times where she's called me out on it and said, Dad, I thought we said we're going to tell each other everything. And I'm like, you're right. And I was, not being truthful or disclosing something I should have. And so we kind of hold each other accountable that way. But, it was those things. I couldn't. I mean, I could try to, you know, do braids and, teach her about this and that. But I didn't feel that I needed to watch YouTube, videos on this endlessly. I mean, she has a mother, and she's going to learn those things from her mother, and I can emotionally support her. And we look back on in pictures, and you could tell, and from pictures when she was at my house, based on her hair and everything and her outfits, right? It's never the best at that, but I was really good at making her laugh and loving her, and those are the things that are most important.
Yeah, no, 100%. Love to see those photos though. That's funny.
Hmm.
Um, and just to be respectful of your time, I just want to ask, two things to kind of wrap up. One, is there anything you wish or you'd like to share that you wish more people could understand about single parenting? Maybe specifically being a single dad. Like, if you meet someone who's a single dad, single mom, is there something you think that would be encouraging or that more people could just know that would be good to know? And then, secondly, how would you encourage a dad who's just starting out on single, being a single
Hmm.
dad maybe, or co-parenting, and they're really scared and they're like, I can't do this, I'm not a good person. I don't i don't see how I could take care of a kid. Like, I want to, but I feel insufficient. I feel like I don't have enough, and I don't want to hurt them or ruin them. um what are your two answers for those things?
Um, I think the best piece of advice I could give is, don't don't dwell on things. Don't wish things could be different, right? Don't I understand, things may not work out as planned, and that's very sad, and you'll feel sorrow, and you'll wonder what did I do, what I could have done differently, but you have to move forward, right? I think that's where a lot of single parents struggle is they're caught in the past, right? Of my the other parent did this to me, now I got to do that to them, seeking some kind of weird revenge, and then the child gets caught up in the mix of that. It's like, no, like, just have to accept that you're on your own, and you're a single parent now, and you have to figure things out for yourself. I mean, sometimes that's just really what it is, and I know that's easier said than done, but like, you know, um, I made sacrifices. You have to make sacrifices, right? Like, early on, as as the payer of child support, right? It was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this, right? And I got creative, and I rented out my place, and my daughter and I moved into like a smaller apartment in the house, and it was just like, this is not ideal, but I have to do what I have to do. And I wasn't about
Yeah.
looking back. It was always about looking forward, about making her happy. I wish I'm one of the things for me in terms of, you know, um, my presence on social media as someone who talks about single parenting, is I've been determined to stay authentic. I know I can fall into the category of influencer, but I'm not an influencer. Like, I have a business that I run, I volunteer, I coach, right? I have many things I do, and parenting is just part of fitting into that. I'm not an expert. I'm just someone who embraces what this is, and has accepted that this is my life. And that's why I've called my blog and my Instagram magic, right? There's magic in being a single parent, right? Again, I would trade it all in to be with her every day, but I'm not. So I'm going to make the most magic out of the moments I have with her and without her, right? I don't want it to make it seem like I'm not doing my job, but yes, when
Yeah.
I don't have her, I'm going to travel, and I'm going to go do things that make me happy. And I'm not parenting at that time, and that's okay, because that's the situation I'm in. So, for dads, I think, most importantly, it's be there, right? Love your children, right? Be present, be loving, be present. That really makes a huge difference over time. They can see that. They can see when you're there, and they can see when you're not there. Kids can see you being negative, to the other parent, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, it may sound silly or cliche, but like it's just love your children, and make all the other stuff work around that to put you in a position to be able to love them and be there for them. And I think that makes a whole world of difference. And maybe over time there's going to be books written on this. I'd like to do that someday, or some some coaching or some therapy where people who, because I said before, it's very scary. It's this world of unknown. It's a lot of fear of, I'm going to fail. How do I do this? It's not possible. And the truth is, it is. It's just comes with reprioritization, sacrifices, and
Yeah.
I think we need to be able to do that for our children.
Well, I think it's so good because a- anything that is not what you plan is always scary or painful, and you always expect it to be super bleak. But
Hmm.
you're right in the sense that, like, there is beauty even in the things you didn't expect. And embracing that and wanting to make it even more beautiful or contributing to it and being like, I want to be present for this. This is not what I wanted. And it's good to admit that, but being able to continue on, like you said, and keep going. Like, I think that's just, it's a very good outlook, even just for life. Whether you're a single parent or not, it's something to be encouraged and to think about because we all complain a ton. I mean, I'm guilty of complaining. I'm not a single parent. I don't even have kids. I complain. Um, but anyway, I mean, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I mean, this has been such a gift to talk with you. I mean, obviously, I can't say completely, oh, I understand your situation because I haven't experienced it. I'm also not a dad, but I'm so grateful. And I hope that when people listen, this is encouraging and helpful for them as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I enjoyed this, and I think I appreciate the opportunity and the forum to talk about this. I've been encouraged for years to do more video, and to get out there more. And it's not necessarily my forte, but every once in a while, someone comes along and has good things to say, and convinces me to get behind the camera and talk more about my experience. And so I'm always grateful for that, and I'm hopeful that this reaches some people, and it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable about that scary change that they go through. And like you said, it's not just single parenthood, it's adulthood, and this is just
Huh.
one, I guess, way to kind of to talk about it, so thank you. I enjoyed this.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you. And I hope you have a good evening. And I don't know if you're going to go make dinner, whatever you're going to do, but thank you for giving me an hour of your time.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm definitely gonna eat. I love food just like you.
I know, me too. All right, bye.
All right, bye.